So welcome back guys. So I hope that you have downloaded the file that I have provided. Press this upload files button and go to downloads where the file that you have downloaded, use the .glb file. It's a 3D object file. If you have Paint 3D, then you might be able to open that, but it will basically upload these files. Let me put it inside the public folder. Now right over here, after doing that, we'll put an ambient lighting to it. Okay, so let me write ambient light. All right, so I'm gonna write intensity as 0.2. So ambient light will basically give an ambience, so something like, it will basically give, so basically this light globally illuminates all the objects in the scene equally. So if you have an object, it will basically illuminate the light on all the objects. This light cannot cast shadows, but it will give us a color of some lighting on the whole place, a whole scene. So it's like that. The example of ambient lighting is the sun. So in the morning, we have lighting all over the world, right? So in that way, so think of it in that way. But the sun, the difference between sun and ambient light is something like this. The sun comes from the light of the sun comes from one source, right? Ambient lighting is like everywhere, just like that. So I hope that you understand what is ambient lighting. So let's move on to the next lighting. All right. So the next light, next light would be something like spotlight. This is the exact example of sun. Yeah. Basically we'll be setting these this thing. So now I'll give a position to it. So I'm gonna give a position of 10 on 10 x y z axis, 10 10 10 on the 10 on the x-axis, 10 on the y and z on 10, and I'm gonna give an angle of 0.15. We can play with these values once we are done. And the penumbra value, penumbra is nothing but it will basically tell us about the penumbra is like the partially shaded outer region of the shadow casted by an opaque object. So it's like that. And now after doing that, let me go to, we'll just write shadow map size. This thing will be always the same for each and every value, each and every thing that we are embedding inside our website. So don't worry about it. And cast shadow in the sense, whenever this light is going to whenever this light is casted on an object, then this particular light will basically cast a shadow. It's like that. All right, now we will use, we will just go ahead and create a new component called as watch. So let me create a new component called as watch.js, and in this thing I'm gonna import React from React. All right, default, export default function watch return. All right, that is what it is. So now I'm just going to write watch. Okay, so now inside the watch, we will now directly embed the values that we want to embed. So let me just receive the props. I have to pass few things like the rotation of it, rotation of x, something like math.pi divided by 2. That is the rotation. And position that I'm gonna give, you can play with the position, to be very honest, and with the rotation as well. 0, -1.4. The one that I find it like very good is this one. I'm gonna make the opacity of it as not opacity. So I don't think we will need a rotation over here. Yeah, we might need a rotation, but we will need the rotation on not only on the x-axis, what all on the axis. So I'm gonna give an array, and on the x-axis this will be minus pi math.pi by 2, and I'm gonna write 0 and 0 on the y and z axis. And on for the position, let me not make it minus, let me make it 0.25, just above the ground. That is why I'm writing 0.25. And I'm gonna scale this up to very small, because ideally whenever you are importing a value from any website, the scale will be like very big, so I can just play with this value. So now I'm receiving the props, and right over here I'm just going to, there are like different options that we can use. Yeah, so let me just write, very first things first, I'm gonna write ref is equals to use ref. So always use ref whenever you are trying to access the Three.js element. All right, and now the best part is just getting the value, and the easiest part, we need to get the nodes, we need to get the materials, and write use gltf, which is imported from the React DREI. So this will help us grab the element, and I'm gonna write something like, yeah, let me check what is the exact route. So I'm over here, I come back to that other route, and I go to inside public. So let me just try it out by writing over here. Yeah, I'm gonna go to public, and inside that I'll have the other values. All right, cool. So inside public I'll have watch v1.glb. okay, I'm gonna do that. So no fallback UI. So we'll fix this, don't worry. I'm gonna reload this up. All right, so don't worry, we'll fix that up. And now over here I'm gonna write group. Basically I'm gonna group a few objects over here. I'm gonna write, first things first, I'm gonna write mesh. Basically mesh will contain the exact geometry that we need, and I'm gonna make the ref as this one, this ref. Let me just write ref over here. All right, and let me just quickly write dot props. So this will add everything that I need, the position, rotation, and all of the other values. And I'm gonna write dispose as equal to null. Okay, that is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna make this thing as empty. Yeah, I'm gonna do that, and then right over here I'm gonna write cast shadow. That means it will receive the shadow. I mean, like, it will cast some shadow, and it should also receive the shadow. And the geometry that we need is from the nodes dot object 006 underscore watch underscore 0 dot geometry. Okay, that is what we are getting the value from. And now we need to write materials dot watch, not capital watch, small watch. Okay, it says that could not load glb. So we will also need one thing that should work, just change the values over here. You can just keep it the way that it was. You can just go to one thing that we need to do is that we need to wrap the this app.js with suspense, so that when the Three.js element will load, it will take some time, right? So just write suspense and write fallback as null, so that it will basically take some time and load over here. So let me open up in a new window. Okay, apparently it's taking some time, so let's wait for it. So I guess it's transpiring the values. So as you guys can see over here, this object is very very small. We will fix it, don't worry about it. So let me just get back to the code. Let me go to the this thing. All right, so we have added this material, we have added this nodes.geometry. We are basically sorted with everything. So now we need to make it look good. So now for that we will use the presentation module. So presentation controls, so that is inside the React 3D REI. All right, so let me wrap this up inside this thing. All right, so now we need to wrap this up. After wrapping it up, we also need few things, like we need contact shadows. You know, contact shadows will basically add the shadows to our canvas. And I'm gonna write rotation, so this will only add it to the x-axis, and I'm gonna write math.pi divided by 2, and I'm gonna give the position as 0 comma minus 1.4 comma 0, and I'll change the opacity to, so whatever the shadows that are inside it will have these things, 0.75, and I'm gonna make the width of it as 10. So as you guys can see, there's one shadow coming over here just below this element, and I'm gonna increase the height of it as well. All right, and let me give a blur on the shadow so that it will look good. Blur, I don't know if the blur would be something around 2 point, I can play with this value, 2.3. Yeah, let me at 2.5. The more blur it is, the more realistic it looks. So that is how it works. And now we also need to pass in far. Yeah, that will fix a lot of things for us. So now as you can see, this thing looks very very far, right? So now we will add some things over here. We will add a shadows. Shadows will tell that it should basically receive and add all of the shadows inside this thing. And we will need to add a DPR. DPR is nothing but the device pixel ratio. Normally it is the 1,2. So we'll just pass this thing, don't worry about it. It's like a thing that we should always do. Normally when we are writing 3JS in normal HTML and CSS, we write window.device pixel ratio. That will automatically do that, but then now we are automatically doing it. We'll change the camera position. Camera position is very far now, right? So we'll add the camera position as, we'll make it closer, something like 0,0,4. That will do a lot of thing for us. And now after that we will also give a FOV, which will basically basically tell us that what should be the field of view from where the object should be seen. That is something like, if we are putting 50, that means it is like almost close but not too close. I'll show you once it loads. So if you guys can see, it's kind of near to you. And as you guys can see, we are almost getting up finished with this part. It looks really great. We'll change the scale, don't worry about it. We'll make it look big. So now it doesn't stay in this way. You know what, I can make it in this way itself. I don't have to worry about it, but I can do a lot of, on this thing. I can basically add a few things on this presentation controls. Basically we can pass in a lot of these things, props over here. So we have an option called present global. Global will when I put it false, I cannot move it. Well, that is what the documentation says. Like when we put when we put false, we can basically spin globally or drag the model, something like that. We can basically spin this model. We can do all sorts of stuff over here. So this is there by default, and in our case we will just write global. That will basically enable it. Okay, and now we will write something like snap. Okay, snap will basically put the snapping feature, like it will basically remove put it back where it is. So we need to give some values to it. We need to give the snap as mass as 4 and the tension that has as 1500. All right, so this number, you can play with this thing because it is just basic physics. I wouldn't say it is basic, but it is physics. You can play with the values. And now we need to write the config. Config is related to the spring, so we need to give the mass over here. I'm gonna give the same thing that I have above, but I'm just gonna decrease the mass, and I'm gonna give the tension as 500. And again, guys, you can please feel free to play with these values. The main thing was to embed in this thing inside our application. That was the main thing to do. All right, so now after writing the config, global is finished, and we need to give the rotation, or polar. So we'll work with the polar first. Polar is nothing but polar is the vertical limits. So we can basically define the vertical limit until where the values, the object can be moved top and bottom. So that is what it is. So let me give the polar value as minus math.pi divided by 3. That is something around some value on the x-axis, and I'm gonna for this one I'm gonna write math.pi divided by 2. So it will go over until over here only. After that it will just snap back. So using the snap, the snap feature is like this is the mass, so the snap will be done based on that mass. If I just make it 1, see, it will just come back. So we need to increase the mass so that it will have this feature. Since the mass is very big, that is why it is like jumping around. That is why it is dumping. So now let's move forward. So similarly, for the polar is the vertical limits, and for the x-axis, the horizontal limit, we have azimuth. Okay, so we'll give the same values, minus math.pi, but over here I'm gonna write 1.4, and I'm gonna give math.pi and divide by 2. So I guess it should let me do it. Yeah, I guess we're pretty much sorted. So now on the z-axis, on the x-axis, I have the limit as well, so it will snap back again. So yeah, we are pretty much sorted with this part, and we are also sorted with FOV. I wanted to tell you about FOV, right? So if I write FOV as 10, see this thing, I'm gonna save this thing, so the camera will basically come very, very closer. I'll reload and show you guys. See, the camera is like very, very, very close to our this thing. So for that we basically need to make the FOV as 50. 50 is like fine. You can play with the values again, it's really up to you. So I guess we are pretty much sorted. So now all we need to do is increase the size of this thing so that it will look great. That we will be doing in the next video. So see you guys over there. Till then, goodbye and take care.